Hello and welcome to another episode of Mitten Backstage. Today's episode, I chat with the Detroit saxophonist Sami Blosser. I've known Sami for a few years now. We met at Western Michigan University, and we've been supporting each other's careers ever since. And it was great getting to catch up with her, as well as see kind of the differences in how the west side of Michigan and the east side of Michigan operate, especially during these crazy pandemic times. If you enjoyed today's podcast episode, you can support podcasts like these by heading on over to patreon.com/Tracy Snedeker. There, you can contribute at different levels for early access to finished audio and video podcasts, as well as exclusive merch, behind-the-scenes live streams, and the ability to hire me for different services, whether you need instruction, consultation, or even remote recording. So thanks again, and feel free to give a like or comment or follow whatever platform you happen to be listening to this on. All those clicks help show support for the podcast, as well as sharing this with your friends. I'm sure there is someone who can benefit from these types of conversations about the Michigan music scene. All right, let's get right into the conversation with Sami Blosser. Yeah, thanks for agreeing to do this on, a few days' notice.
No worries. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and for those, who might not know who you are, what you do, there'll be like a little description, but what are you currently up to in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, so I graduated from Western Michigan a couple of years ago, and then I moved to the Detroit area, where I've been gigging with a couple different projects. I'm in a wedding band, of course, and, I've been composing a lot. I play saxophone. That's my main instrument. Been dabbling in singing a little bit, not very much, but just kind of trying it out.
Yeah, I've been seeing some of your, posting of different things you do with even just like, knitting as a hobby and different, recordings you've made, playing along to stuff or playing new stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I've been doing some covers. I actually just started yesterday. I started doing this challenge. A friend of mine, Tristan, to me, you might know him. He's from this area, Tristan Capel. He did a project where he wrote a new blues head every day for a month.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, I want to do that. That looks challenging. So
yeah, I feel like that kind of challenge is one that I feel like for me, I'd get started and I'd feel like, yeah, I'll write one in like this key and this key. And then, 12 days in, you've written it in every key that you could, or like maybe every major key and every minor key. But then you're trying not to sound the same. And you're like, I don't know, trying out new harmonies. Like there's so many, the blues can be as simple or as like involved as you want it to be.
Right. Like yesterday, I cranked something out really quickly, but A, it was an F. So, and B was like, I was coming in fresh. So I was just like, oh, I have all these lines in my head I can use. And now today it's already like, oh, crap. Like, oh, crap.
Oh, yeah, I have to do it again. What key?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have a little like, I as often as I try to have these more complicated writing prompts, sometimes it's easy to have like, a nugget of like, oh, write a blues head every day, because that could lead to, playing around with, phrasing ideas you haven't tried out, chord ideas you haven't tried out, like, and for me, I almost want to get back into writing because of this residency I'm going to be having at the listening room with a couple different trios. It affords me the opportunity to like, each week have something ready at the top of the week, give it to the other trio members, and then they can learn it and we can just like play it on a gig.
Right. Yeah, that's perfect. That's great. We've been having a couple guys over, a guitarist and a bassist from the area, every week, ish every week. Sometimes, stuff comes up, but, and we've just been rehearsing and like, we've been trying to like come up with a list of tunes that people don't normally play that we'd like to learn. Like we've been bringing in a couple originals, working on like, we haven't touched it in a while, but we were working on a tram tune.
Oh yeah. Which one?
7 Ways Till Sunday.
Oh, that's a great one. I used to do I mean we only did it a couple times, but I used to do Kicker with
Nice.
a group, and I've always wanted to. That actually reminds me, I want to arrange um what is that last song? It's like the last song on the record where it's just like guitar and soprano sax.
Mhm.
And there's this guitarist who I met at a it was one of the like Western, like it might have been during the Splice Festival or something, when there's just a lot of like composers at Western, and I performed a piece in a concert, and then one of the person after me, or a couple spaces after me, I think his name's Anthony Landman. I'd have to double check his name, but he plays an 8-string guitar, and the duo he brought was him and soprano sax. And I was like,
Oh.
ooh. I could at least know that one piece to try and arrange.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting setup.
Yeah, it like covers I don't know, it like covers a nice spread, like 8-string guitar having like a good low range, but also, a different timbre for a higher range, and then soprano sax is a little bit more rounded, so it can kind of fit in between the nooks and crannies of a guitar sound.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's interesting. Yesterday I was watching a video of a 14-string guitar,
Oh.
and it was kind of stupid because the stuff he was playing, you could just play on regular guitar.
Was it like a double neck tapping type thing?
No, it was a single neck, and the neck was like this wide or something,
Oh.
and it was just really silly.
Was it I've seen like, like Jared Dines or like Rob Scallon, those kind of people who like they lean into the ridiculousness of extended range guitars, and I know Jared Dines had one that it looked like it was like that wide. He's like, it's the new gent for 2021. He's like, can't even reach the top of it. um yeah, at some point it's like you're just getting into, harp guitar range, or just get a piano and just turn it sideways if you're gonna need more strings.
Yeah, just pull out a guitar, whatever.
Yeah, just get your family's old baby grand and just put it on a stand vertically, and then from that.
There you go.
Yeah, and so you guys are is it with I know with rehearsing right now, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna play gigs when gigs open up, or have you guys been rehearsing and kind of like fielding what offers are around Detroit at all? I don't know how much being on the west side, like how Detroit's doing with restaurants opening back up, and who's playing, or what is there even to do.
Yeah. Well, it's gone in and out. There are a couple clubs like the Blue Llama in Ann Arbor. I think they're having people play there. I'm not really sure. Like they were, and then they weren't, and then they were again. I know Cliff Bells, they were, and then they weren't. I don't think they are still. That's been weird. I think Dirty Dog, which is in Grosse Pointe, that's a really, really great club. I think they're having a couple shows there. But we're still like, as a group collectively, we're still kind of just like feeling each other out and like getting our sound together. And we kind of agreed like we're not really ready to like take on gigs just yet. Like we really want to try to develop our sound before we kind of branch out and go into the world.
Right. Yeah, and I think that I think that's totally fine with stuff with how the climate is right now, being
Mhm.
able to like, be realistic about a project's goals. And I think about, even my group Earth Radio, we're we're going to be having meetings coming up here just to kind of figure out, what are our goals for this year? What realistically can we take on?
Mhm.
We're trying to, set kind of a new standard for the band. Like if we're going to be playing shows, if we're going to be playing shows that are like, not the best pay, which we really don't want to do, but we're
Mhm.
trying to follow those like pillars of like, is it a good opportunity for the band? Is it a good crowd? Like, is it our people, good crowd, good,
Mhm.
good environment for the audience to enjoy some music? And then is it good pay? Because I know it's a mixed bag in terms of like who feels comfortable traveling, who even wants to travel, who needs to keep certain gigs. Like a couple of us are in Blue Water Kings, so it's like who needs to
Mhm.
keep the $500 gig a,
Yeah.
a certain Saturday in August or something like.
Right.
Um, but yeah, are you guys like? Is it coming together like you kind of know what each other's strengths are, or you're you know writing new compositions and seeing what sticks type of thing, or
Yeah, we're just kind of feeling it out. Right now our main focus is just tunes and like trying out different tunes. Like one that we're working on right now is Grand Central. That's a great, great Coltrane tune. And it's pretty challenging. And we're just suggesting different tunes that maybe people don't normally play or we don't hear as much. Um, yeah, and like I said, we've done a couple of originals, and I haven't brought anything of mine in yet, but I'm thinking about, maybe our next rehearsal I'll bring something in. But all of our compositions are more in like the very modern kind of vein. Um, so it's kind of a stark contrast between like, classic hard bop tunes and like more modern compositions, and then of course the tram thing, which is like outer space
yeah.
compared to everything else. So, yeah, we're just trying to find our sound and what we like best as a group.
Yeah, I think that shows too, like, I feel like a lot of jazz focused players in Michigan, especially those who've gone through the different schools, there's a point where you kind of reach a point where you're like, all right, I've spent 4 years of an undergrad kind of playing from the same book of tunes. And when you're out of that environment, you're like, oh, I could, I could transcribe artists that I listen to more regularly, or I could,
Mhm.
do a not as well known tune from somebody's catalog.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've had any focus on transcribing or even just learning a tune um with your saxophone rep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been great to be able to branch out because you know what, Western, um, the way we do it there for undergrad is you have your jury list, and for your juries, you have to play these 6 or 7 tunes. So you spend a lot of time focusing on those rather than like I mentioned, like more lesser known tunes or whatever. So right now, I am transcribing. I'm working on a Sunny Sit solo right now. Just trying to get a lot more like very definitive, solid bebop language in my playing. Um, and I think that writing blues every day is going to help me with that because I find that like when it comes to composing, like the lines are right there, but then when I go to like improvise, the lines are just like they're not as clear cut as when I'm sitting down and like writing it out. So I'm hoping that, by doing that, I can like start to get more language in my brain so that it just comes right out when I play.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that balance of, being able to play organically and then have that turn into something, and then also be able to sit down with like a loose concept and then start to apply like notes and phrasing
Right.
and all that.
Right. And another thing that's been shaping my playing is just kind of understanding the general Detroit sound. It's very like um I don't think aggressive is the right word for it, but it's definitely like tipping.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of emphasis on monk tunes. That's a huge thing.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of emphasis on, hard bop. That's a huge thing. So, and it's, in a lot of ways, it's different from what I experienced on the west side of the state. So I'm just kind of adapting to that and trying to develop that language and fit into that sound.
Yeah, because as much as there's like, you know, there's a history with the West End and even I noticed that the West Michigan Jazz Society, they have some new board members and some new people working on expanding what that group does, beyond just like, being around at certain jazz events, supporting the jazz education, supporting, you know, artists who are in the area, with like, even something as simple as like cataloging jazz gigs for like their monthly calendars and stuff. Um, they're starting to do these videos that are kind of like mini documentaries about artists who helped shape, you know, education in the area or helped shape, the sound and the culture.
Hmm.
Um, and then with Detroit, there's just a million intersections of like, like the, techno, Motown, hip hop, like
Yeah.
just a million different like strong musical presences to pull from. And it's always interesting to, you know, go over that side of the go into that city and know that there's like, there's killer MCs, and then there's like a really healthy contemporary classical scene, which
Hmm.
I'd like dipping into. And, the jazz scene is, there's going to be a different vibe at Cliff Bells versus Dirty Dog versus, I mean, that's in Grosse Pointe, but,
It's the
and
area.
then, yeah. And then, what's the one, uh, the historical one?
Oh, Bakers?
Yeah, Bakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like each club has its own story and longer standing heritage to the area.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just such a rich, rich culture. And it's, in like general music history, it's not really talked about. People kind of gloss over Detroit and the contributions that it made for the music community. Um, but it's so, so steeped in just so many different areas. It's really quite fascinating.
Yeah, and even like I think of, thinking of glossing over, like when most people think of Motown, there's like certain artists or there's a certain like, a reference to a television clip or like, there's a certain, Hitsville or Barry Gordy or like, some of those names get thrown out. But then to think like Motown was also, you know, as much as there was attention to how music was recorded and produced and published, and then, you know, seeing the performers in that kind of Motown sound, the fashion too was like like
Yeah.
that was as much of a thing. Like people could latch onto like a group and be like, oh, they're wearing this like teal colored ensemble thing, and that's part of the fashion of the culture.
Yeah.
But yeah, it must be a fun city to like, because you're originally from the east side, but not necessarily Detroit area.
Right. I grew up in a tiny little cornfield called Temperance. And it's the last town over the border before you get to Toledo, Ohio.
Hmm. So you're like, yeah,
So,
still just enough in Michigan, but close to a completely different state.
right. Yeah. It's generally considered more part of the Toledo area, but it's like removed enough. Like when I was growing up there, it was like right on the line between rural and suburban. Now it's a little more suburban. Um, But I mean, I literally, like, there was a cornfield, and then there was my like small little 30 house subdivision.
Just a big open field, and then the people in the field, and then another field.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can imagine, not a lot of music going on there.
Yeah, well, and temperance sounds like, it it isn't temperance like a religious term for like, like sobriety or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so it is. Was there any sort of like, you know, was that vibe kind of in the small town, or was it just like it just happened to be named Temperance from back then, and people had, was it like, oh, it's a small community and a church, and that's where everyone kind of congregates? It's just like, oh, we know each other because there's only like a couple thousand of us in this town.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a church on every corner. We're definitely like Bible Belt. But it's really funny because we actually had a couple liquor stores pop up as I got a little older. And I'll never forget when the first liquor store popped up, there was outrage, absolute outrage. People were so pissed about it. And now no one cares. But like when I first got there, everyone was like, there's a liquor? They sell liquor at the gas station? That's horrible.
This is gonna poison our community and our youth. And
Yeah, it was hilarious.
so then was your music experience in the church to start, or was it more in like the high school band, middle school band, or something?
Yeah, definitely the band program. I actually grew up Jewish, so we went to Toledo and I heard a lot of harmonic minor. and
Mhm.
and yeah, so I started in 5th grade like most kids did, and I was just enamored with the saxophone, and I just wanted to learn all about it. And eventually by the time I got to high school, I went to Blue Lake, and that like really set it off. I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. I got to learn more."
Yeah.
So, my neighbor actually is still the director of the music program at University of Toledo. And so when I was in 7th grade, I was in summer band, and he pulled me aside afterwards and he goes, "Okay, you're taking lessons with me now." I was like, "What?" He's like, "I'm your teacher now. You're taking lessons with me." And so he
Okay.
taught me all the way from 7th grade all the way to the end of high school.
Yeah. Wow. That's like, you know, I had a similar, in terms of someone just telling me I was taking lessons. I started when I was 8, and my dad likes to say that I picked the piano and wanted to take music lessons, and partially that's true. I took like one lesson on drums because I always liked to drum along to the whatever's on the radio and car trips with different family members, and um I distinctly remember being in my dad used to have a Cadillac, and I remember being on the way to school, and he was like, all right, so you're gonna turn 8, and you're gonna start an instrument. Okay, I guess that's I guess this is happening. And then me and all of my younger brother and younger sister, we all took lessons. And after high school was kind of like, all right, you don't have to keep taking lessons, you don't have to, or even partway through high school, like you don't have to you can choose not to do music. And here I am, just still doing it. But
Here we are.
here we are, still doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man, I think my biggest regret is my parents got me into piano when I was 8. And I don't know if you're familiar with this book, but Alfred put out a book called Music for Little Mozarts.
Music
And
for little modes. I don't know if I learned through the Alfred series, but I don't think I remember that book.
well, it's for really little kids, and my piano teacher insisted on taking me through that book. And they had like this little like Beethoven bear and Mozart mouse characters, and I got little stuffed animals, and like I hated it. I hated it. So after a little while, I was like, "Mom, I can't do this," and she pulled me out. And now, like being in college and having that like actually learn the piano, I'm like, why did I stick with it?
I could have already been in
Oh,
class.
come on. My life could have been so much easier.
Yeah, it's so funny how many people that because I remember that too, going to Grand Valley and hearing like, before I really knew like a different instrument, how the the coursework was scheduled, and in my head I'm like, oh, I gotta take a piano. I'm here to study piano. Like, why do I need to take a piano class? And they're like, no, you already did it. Like, you know way more than anyone who's going to be in that class, so you're not taking that. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you was it like mainly because I mean I met a lot of classical saxophonists, but it wasn't until um yeah, it wasn't until college. So I assume for most saxophone players it's like jazz band is what you're kind of starting with.
Kind of. I mean, my teacher was classical based, so I actually did classical saxophone all the way through my high school years. And I didn't really start learning jazz until my senior year of high school. Now, I was in jazz band, but like jazz band is like you're not really learning how to improvise, I guess, you know? And like my teacher was
No.
a French horn player, so he was kind of like, he like knew the history and like knew, how to basic improvise, but like it wasn't like I was learning language or anything.
Right.
It was just a very general overview. And so yeah, my senior year of high school I got a jazz teacher, and that helped a lot. Um so yeah, I pretty much was raised on classical saxophone.
So you were doing like I don't know. I don't know what like because saxophone's such at least from what I learned accompanying so many classical saxophonists, saxophone like because it was created later in kind of that in the classical family, the a lot of the music is like transcriptions of pieces that other instruments play, but then there's certain composers like I don't know, like Sangelet and De Crook and Desenclos and all these random French people that
Yeah.
wrote saxophone music.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a really famous A2 book by Fairling, which is just an oboe book, but they plastered saxophone on it, and now it's a saxophone book.
Yeah, and it's close. I mean, I guess depending on which saxophone too, it's like you just pick the transposition. Like, okay, well, the B flat instrument, we'll do like clarinet, bass clarinet.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
random.
yeah. I mean, you can find a decent amount of literature for alto saxophone, but if you're looking for classical music for like tenor saxophone, good luck.
Or you have to like, you know, adapt it for the instrument from the higher range instrument.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, because I remember just having, and I'm sure at some point if I really wanted to, I could start advertising. I know all these pieces, because it was like I would learn a piece and then suddenly the way the studio instructor would program stuff for students, there would be like three other people who needed that, or the whole studio is learning these two De Crook pieces or something, or the two like some people are learning the Creston Sonata and there's someone
Yep.
learning the Creston Concerto and
Yep.
um,
Classic.
yeah, all the classic saxophone.
All the hits, all 5 of the hits.
Yeah, all the all the five hits that I like played recitals and competitions and yeah, it's funny that there is like the music's cool. There's a lot of cool classical sax music, but yeah, it's just like the volume of it isn't as crazy as like a piano or a violin or something.
Right. Right. And classical saxophone is such a niche thing. Like, a lot of jazz musicians just kind of dismiss classical saxophone. Um, and like the sound in general is just so different. Like it's so stuffy and dark. And so just playing classical saxophone is such a different world, but at the same time, like the technique is just astounding that it takes. I mean, especially more modern pieces, like there's so many insane acrobatics that go into it.
Yeah, I would see like players, doing those kind of pieces that, it's 4 minutes of circular breathing with slap tonguing and like
Yeah.
it's just like the level of control they have to like be able to just keep the sound flowing.
Right. And at the same time, it's like, why?
Yeah. Like nobody, like 10 people care and they all play saxophone. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember Wayne State University, thinking of Detroit, they had a like a music tech presentation, and this saxophone player set up, I think he set up like, he stood in the center, and then there was like a mapped out grid with tape, and on the left, right, in front, and behind him, and they had modified like an Xbox Kinect camera to um, read, to like basically take sensor input and like translate him stepping into certain spaces as a way to trigger certain effects or processes.
Whoa.
He was like playing a piece that he could like, he's playing and then he jumps into the left space, and it would like freeze a loop, and then that loop would keep going from what he was playing, and then he could play along with it, and then when he stepped out the loop would stop and reset. And like, oh, if he dipped into a little bit of the square, some reverb would pop in. If he jumped all the way in, it would be this like really wide crazy reverb. And
Wow. That's crazy.
yeah,
That's like pretty cool.
it's yeah, it and seeing it with saxophone, it like I feel like I see more saxophone players doing that in contemporary classical than like other older classical instruments who I don't know if it's because they don't feel like they have that repertoire, or if there's just something about playing the saxophone in modern music that you're just drawn to like interesting non-conventional playing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many unique things that happen with the saxophone. I mean, I've seen like quartets just all of a sudden in the middle of it just rip their neck off and start playing the mouthpiece and the neck. It's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like because the instrument I feel like because the instrument too was like a lot of its development was in jazz, where a lot of it's not it's like the development wasn't necessarily because, oh, you're in a school and you're working on a technique and your chops just get more and more and more to a point where you're like, oh, the new technique is you're just playing really fast. It's people who learned like, I don't know, growling or like certain ways to affect the timbre,
Mhm.
like, I don't know, the energy behind certain types of phrasing. And violin didn't have that.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, it's interesting that saxophone's kind of, in some respects, like, being later, it's like, okay, it doesn't have as much like classical rep. It's not really, you can adapt rep to it, but it's not like, Bach was writing for saxophone. And
Right. Right.
but then having so much of the instrument being tied to like more than one genre, it helps like someone who picks up the instrument have a lot of different avenues, or even like I think of groups like Too Many Zoos with that one dude who just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
dancing around playing Barry really well. Like that's somebody could pick up a saxophone and be like, oh, like I want to know how to play that strong. I want to know how to do the slap tonguing and key clicks and circular breathing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it must be, you know, uh, every time you pick it up, there's always something you can like focus on and improve. And
Hmm. Yeah. There's so many possibilities, the acrobatics are just endless on the saxophone.
yeah, and you've been doing more of the, more than like in the sense like you didn't really do it at all, and now you're starting to dip your toes into like posting stuff on Instagram and like trying to showcase, even with your knitting, like it's another way of being like, hey, I do art stuff.
Yeah, totally. I mean, picking up the hobby of crochet was just like, my friend Anna is really, really good at it, and she kind of has been helping me along the way. And it's so fun. Like right now, I'm working on a poncho. Next up, I've got a dress I want to do. Um, and it was really fun to be like, hey, I made this. This is cool. Like, um, I'm not the best at it by any means, but it's something to kind of keep my hands busy and keep me active and not just be like drowning in music all the time. Even
Yeah.
though when I crochet, I listen to music, so I guess I still am drowning in music, but
Yeah, you're not sitting there being like, what was that lick? What do I rewind, transcribe,
yeah.
apply it to your language?
Yeah, I'm definitely just trying to increase my social media presence because I think, nowadays that's super important. And I'm just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, what people like, you know, better ways to angle my camera, and, basic things like that, like lighting that doesn't suck. Um, and yeah, picking like a what's it called? Like an image to be the cover photo, that
Oh yeah.
doesn't suck, isn't unflattering. I'm still learning that one.
Yeah, it's funny to see like, you know, there is something to be said for people who kind of just they're very bold in the choice, even if it, regardless of how, like it could be like super dialed in, edited professional looking photo, or it could be like, you know, a digital collage that looks like it was cut out of the internet, like a magazine, just kind of put together.
Hmm.
um, and yeah, I feel like the goal is always just to represent your what you love doing authentically, in a way that, comes across as like this isn't just like for Instagram or for TikTok. It's like this is something that's also part of the journey of being an artist right now.
Right. Yeah. Like this is the process. I think that's really interesting. We'll see how people react. I'm gonna try posting every day now. I just started a brand new page because like I get a lot of promotional items in the mail that I have to like review and post on Instagram, and I don't want that crap mixed in with my music. Like that's just it's not really a good look. So,
Yeah, I just started I posted a story about it on my Instagram. I want to start doing more things related to like the hobby I have in being kind of a collector of different, like video game systems and consoles, and then, getting back into card collecting. I can't do the craziness of some of these, Pokemon YouTubers who like I spent, the equivalent of 6 cars on like a stack of vintage Pokemon boxes, and it's
yup.
but I figured the same thing. Like it's part of me, but it's not part of the the music stuff that my main pages are focused on. Even with, podcasting, it's a different presentation, but it's still centered on, music, life, conversation, that kind of
Mhm.
stuff.
And I think it's super important for us as musicians to have, a different hobby because, our hobby is our job. So it's like, having something outside of that is really important to keep us well-rounded and not, just so locked into one thing. And the other thing is it's hard not to share our hobbies, because we're so used to like we want to share our music. And I'm like, "Oh, I want to share my crochet." And you're like, "Oh, I want to share my card collections." Which there's nothing wrong with that, but I think we're just naturally inclined to want to like share whatever we're doing with the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've also been figuring out like time for, I've been doing these Saturday morning walks with some old friends, and that's been nice to just. It's something I don't need to like share or post about or like it's just chatting with people. It's a couple hours to like not think about the incessant being self-employed and
Mhm.
but I also like you know I like that with it's interesting with like the collectors I've seen that focus on different things. Some people are really active and that's their focus, it's their job. Some people treat it as an investment, so they're talking about what to put your money in and all that. And then there's some who it might be like 4 months and then they post a video that's like it's like, oh, I'm gonna do a tour of this thing that
Mhm.
I just redid this room and it's got
Yeah.
all this stuff and it's cool and um it's still it it might be more niche, but it's like I like that it's someone who's still sharing an experience or something that's unique to what they're doing, but it's not the obsessive nature of like, okay, each video's gotta hit at least 10 minutes on YouTube every day because that's how I can get ad rolls, and I need to make sure that I'm building towards certain bigger events to like be able to market my merch. And it's like there's already so much of that it's nice for people who are just like, hey, this is kind of cool, check it out. And then you know that it's lower pressure and um yeah, I'm all for you know being like sharing the hobby but not trying too hard to monetize it, because I saw a meme that was like is like we shouldn't be telling people to like that they can squeeze an income out of everything they do that
Right.
originally started as something fun. We just need the standards of pay and living to go up.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, we're just so used to constantly having to hustle. It's like natural.
Yeah, and it's already like I think too of like this year off of the grind of like doing shows and having like weekends um that aren't just like get in a car, which was still fun, like get in a car, drive to another city, drive to another state,
Mhm.
play music, figure out where to stay, probably on someone's couch, wake up, drive as much as 5-6 hours home depending on the
Mhm.
city, and then like you kind of thrown back into the week of like, okay, I was gone from my hometown, now I gotta go do the stuff I didn't do because I was gone. And
Right.
now it's like there's a little bit more room to kind of figure out what you want to do and what you want to focus on. And yeah, I'm definitely like keeping my ears open for like the people who are actually investing rather than just taking every single gig that
Right.
my way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure it's been interesting trying to like you know because you also teach, so you've had to like adapt a lot of different students to this new environment over a year, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that was tricky.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about teaching remotely is I actually have more like of my own private students versus through a studio. So that's, a little more lucrative and allows me a little more freedom with like how I teach the students because I'm not forced to conform to a studio standards. Um, but I still have, a couple studio students, but I mean, literally just 3. So, it's pretty late, and um, you know, I've had some luck, some not so luck with the commitment of my students. Sometimes if they're not through a studio, they just drop off the face of the earth and ghost me, and I'm like, okay, well, guess they're not coming back.
Yeah.
Like, I have one student right now, he paid me in advance for like 10 lessons, and he's been gone for the last 3 and hasn't texted me. So I just have his money and he's gone. So
Yeah. Oh, that just reminded. Wow. I just, I just literally just remembered I have my only student. He was gone for a week, and we had a lesson last week. This was, yeah, last week was the week after he had done his trip, and then last week we did a lesson, and he was like, "Hey, can we just do the next 3 Tuesdays?" And I didn't touch base with him today,
yeah.
but he's usually pretty flexible for a half-hour lesson. Um, but yeah, that's at least, you've whittled it down to like people who are, sticking it out and not. I think a lot of people, they see the, like moms see the test scores, like, oh, if your kid learns music, the test scores go up, and then it's like that's gonna help with college or something. And then other people see like, oh, if you are learning an instrument, there's like, you know it's culture, and it's an
Mm.
art, it's an art form, it's a skill. And then a lot of times teachers are, from a lot of the friends I've talked to, it's always a mixed bag of like there's like 4 dedicated people, there's 6 like sometimes like decent, and then there's like a bunch of just, I'm babysitting your child for an
Yep.
hour.
Yup. Luckily, teaching remote, I've been able to wean those kids out because, like, kids like that, they're just so sick of online learning because, schools are online, that they're just like, I'm done. So all of my students right now are actually pretty committed, minus the one that's ghosting me. But um, yeah, and oh, it's so nice. It's so nice to have students that like actually care about the music and like don't need constant validation, because that's definitely a thing at the studios. Like, my one studio I work for has this like musical ladder program where the kids get like bracelets every 3 months and we're supposed to test them on stuff. And like, that's good for like little kids and like parents mostly, so they can be like, "Oh, my kid's improving."
Yeah.
Like, for my older students, it's like, do you really need this? Like, do you really need this to validate that you're getting better? Like, you get better because I tell you you're getting better.
Yeah, like it's and that should be like, that is true. Like the arts sometimes are treated like, you know like I think of like high school, like competing with ensembles is like, okay, that's cool, and it strengthens an ensemble, and it's putting your best foot forward, and it's kind of advertising different band directors' approaches, and they all kind of get together and you know either are friends or they just kind of suss each other out, and
Yeah.
are they so good? Or but then there is that element of like, for a school, you know they like to see that competition because it turns into something they can like use other than the inherent value of arts. They could be like, oh, top like 2010 best band in whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's interesting that private lessons would also try and like have like, here's your good job pin for a month of playing 15 minutes a week. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's, I don't know. I feel like you probably will have, like, going forward with having more control over the students you have. It'll be nice to continue to develop the remote versus in person type of things as things open back up, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And eventually I'll go in person again, but probably not anytime soon. I'm kind of liking just chilling at home.
Yeah, I really thought about it the other day, like how much I've enjoyed like having more time in my space and wanting to make it like a better relaxing space to be in, because so often it's like with a busy schedule, it's like I'm up, I'm out, I'm not back until late, so I just kind of sleep, and there's really, stuff I don't use, there's things I don't, take advantage of that I bought to like enjoy. And this past year's made me appreciate like even just like being able to sleep in, like that's been huge.
Yeah.
But awesome. Yeah, that's a good snapshot of the east side of the state. And I'm interested to hear, later on this year, like how the summer's going, how like, getting back into like who knows what school is going to be like in the fall, like with the vaccine coming, and how that affects, people's, are things going to be more in person with teaching, or more, are there going to be more opportunities for players again? Like it's going to be interesting to see the differences in the same state.
Yeah, for sure. This is all uncharted territory for everyone, so
yeah, just taking it at a measurable pace, and seeing what opportunities you have with the people who want to support you, instead of I'm over like trying to hold my hand like, hey, would you please pay us like it's like you either hear us and immediately get what we're doing and want to have us in your space, or like what do I have to do to convince you other than that? Like I shouldn't have to like, oh well, he gets a beer with me, so he play his instrument. No, they're like, do you want to just have people? If everyone you booked was just people you got beers with, like it'd be like a weird like imbalance in talent.
Yeah.
But yeah, where can people find you in now that you're doing more social media stuff? And I don't know if your project has a name or anything yet, or if it's still in. Yeah, you were saying it's in the draft stage, but
yeah, it's still in the draft stage. My Instagram is Sami Sax, Sami, and stupid name from college, but it's catchy, so whatever. I've been I just opened it up, so it's brand new, but my goal is to post something every day as my process for the Blues Challenge, the Blues Head Challenge. I've got some stuff posted on my YouTube, which is Samantha Blosser. I label everything Sami B, but I think my channel is under Samantha Blosser because that's my Google name and it's all connected.
Yeah.
And then my Facebook is Sami B's Sounds and Stitches.
Sounds and Stitches. Oh, the music and the knitting.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, thanks for coming on, and I'm sure we'll have another conversation this year about what's going on in different spheres of Michigan. And for those who are listening now, or after the fact when this goes live publicly, if you dig these kind of conversations and want to support, you can go to www.patreon.com/Tracy Snedeker. You can shoot over $5, $10, $30, $60, or $100. All of those tiers give you access to early podcasts, an audio and video form, a mailer newsletter with like special artwork stickers that gotta get sent out as little merch items. There's merch store discounts for the bands I'm in. There's the opportunity to hire me as a consultant or an instructor or a recording artist. Like it's a home base as much as my website, DePree.com, where you can find everything else I do. But yeah, thanks again